Council, while we're waiting, what's the earliest you guys can be here tomorrow?
I'll be up at 2:30, Judge, so whatever time you want me here, I can be.
A little too early. I appreciate the sentiment. Can you guys be here no later than 8:15?
Like in our seats with the jury coming in the door, or
Well,
stuff spread out on the
I'm
desk?
considering having the jury here by 8:30.
Okay.
Try to start at 8:30.
That's fine.
I can make it happen.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We're back on the record. State of Ohio, Lindsay Partin. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, any issues to report to the court? Seeing and hearing none. State of Ohio wish to resume where we were when we took our break.
Has happened to this baby, right?
Obviously, I mean, when all that was happening this morning, I was thinking to myself, there's no way that just falling on the concrete floor made her, I could have swore like the head, this has been going on. I don't understand.
Have you seen her come to the house with bruises on her face?
Yeah.
Before the accident yesterday?
Yes.
So she had bruises on her face this week?
Yeah.
Where at?
Before she told the jury?
Like one was like right here, and then she had one on her chin.
It was the one in the chin from when she fell here.
You're good.
From where it was started when you first came in. I know there was a little, I don't want to say hubbub, but there was some obvious conversations over there among the jury. By order of the court, for reasons that I can't go into and you guys don't need to concern yourself with, portions of this video have been redacted slightly. So if there's any confusion to that, I apologize, that's what happened. So there were no errors in playback or anything like that. So from this point forward, just please go with that understanding. Okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Because something has happened to this baby, right?
Obviously, I mean, when all that was happening this morning, I was thinking to myself, there's no way that just falling on that concrete floor made her, I could have swore like the head, this has been going on. I don't understand.
Have you seen her come to the house with bruises on her face?
Yeah.
Before the accident yesterday?
Yes.
So she had bruises on her face this week?
Yeah.
Where at?
Before she told the jury?
Like one was like right here, and then she had one on her chin.
It was the one in the chin from when she fell here.
that got worse. There was one on her chin before that, and then when she fell on the gravel.
So there's bruising before?
Yeah, it got worse, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And Jeff, when she tripped on her heel of her boot on the rock, and like, yeah, and she better tell me too.
All right,
I don't want
do you want me to give him a call?
No, I want to call my lawyer. I'm completely, honestly telling the truth, and I would never lie. I wouldn't lie to anybody. And
Yeah.
Now, if you want to call your lawyer, but, I mean, do you still want to talk to us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
You're doing it. This is what you're supposed to be doing, helping us.
I'll do anything I can, though.
Well, we do appreciate it.
Anything that's going to be able to help us out with cannabis,
You know, and I know that you want to do.
She is our main concern.
She's been my main concern.
So for how long has she been your main concern?
Since I met her. Since I met her.
And what's your reasoning for that?
She's my mom. My husband didn't have a mom.
Yeah.
There's a big difference when you don't have nurturing and love. And I'm not saying that you didn't do that, but women are different.
Right.
Like even last night after I was putting the paper up on her face, she looked at me and said, "Love you, buddy. You take good care of me." I'm honestly in shock. It was literally 30 seconds to a minute, him dropping her off and us walking in the house. And she collapsed. I hadn't even shut the door behind me yet.
You hadn't shut the door yet, but you told me that you were walking in towards the kitchen with Governor Donuts.
No, I hadn't even shut it.
You hadn't shut
I
it?
didn't even shut it. No.
So you weren't in the same room with her when she turned around and looked at you?
No, I was still. So, here's the door, here's that chair, here she is. I put my phone down, went to take off my robe. She looked up.
I have a couple questions I want to ask you.
Sure.
And listen to
Yeah.
me. And I don't know if since you've been in here talking to them, because I've been meeting with my boss, if you've been talking about an attorney or anything. So I just want to make sure because I have a couple more questions I want to ask you, but I want to make sure you are still well aware of your rights.
Yeah.
Okay? So I just want to go
I didn't do
through.
anything wrong.
And I realize that. You should.
I
Right.
didn't even know who to call.
Okay, but I want to go through them one more time real fast, okay? Just to make sure I'm
Yes.
good at asking you a couple
Yes,
questions.
of course.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to consult an attorney. If you can't afford one, when we appoint for you free of charge, you stop talking to myself or Detective Lambert at any time. Do you understand your rights as I read them to you? Are you okay answering a couple more questions,
Yes.
knowing your rights?
Yes.
Okay. Is this your phone?
Yes.
And this is what we wrote down on the back.
Yes.
Would you give us consent to look in your phone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I punch that code in?
I'll do my thing.
Do you care if I do it?
No.
So what time, let me ask you this. Well, I don't know. How do you have Jason in here?
Jason Lecce.
Wait, hold on. My glasses on because I have Paul on. Jason Lecce. There he is. So I see he sends you texts every morning.
Yep.
When he sends you these texts, like today says, getting ready to head over, and you reply back, okay. How long does it take him to get over there after you send that text?
5 to 10 minutes. He's always late.
So is that usually every morning? Is it 5 to 10 minutes before he gets there? All right. So
Well, I take that back. He's usually late, but if he's got to get the truck ready and take it down, then he's on time. It just depends on if he's driving his own car or if he's taking the truck down, because then he's got to load it.
But this morning, when you said he was probably 5 or 10 minutes after that, which I get that.
Yeah.
So would you agree, on my watch right now, it is 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And would you agree that your phone says 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
All right. So if we go back to his text, would you agree that that says at 6:52 a.m. he's getting ready to head over?
Mm-hmm.
And you say okay, right?
Yeah.
At 6:52.
Yeah.
How long was she in the house?
Not long, 30 seconds.
And then 911 was called.
Yeah, I called him first. I wasn't really
You
sure what
real
was
good with
happening.
math?
Not really, no.
All right, I'm gonna try to help you out with time, with the clock. 6:52 a.m. So let's give him benefit of the doubt, 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
7:02 a.m.
Yeah.
Or excuse me. Yes, 7:02 a.m.
Yes.
All right, 7:02 a.m. If it's 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think that 911 call was placed?
I don't know.
8:20.
Are you serious?
1 hour and
Really?
18 minutes later. Now, what you've done,
That looks bad.
that is bad. What you've done is said he was there this happened within seconds of him being there,
It really
and that
did.
child was there an hour and 20 minutes, giving him the benefit of
Are you
the
sure?
doubt.
Can I look at that real quick? I don't think you're right. Hold on, let me look at my time clock.
Let's,
Pull up my calls real quick. Pull up my calls when 911 was called. Because it was 7:20. Because I looked at the clock, it was that early. Go back to my call log.
hold on.
I'm sorry. It's okay. Yeah, 7:02 911 was called. I called 911 at 7:02 and him at 7:01.
Well, I'm looking at the CAD report wrong.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah,
You are right.
I called right away. I'm like, there's no way that it was an hour. It was right away. I mean, it happened within seconds. I'm telling you the truth. I swear to God I am. I am not lying to you. I do not lie. I would not lie. I wouldn't lie. I just don't
All
lie.
right, hang tight.
Okay. Do you need me to drink? Okay. No, I'm not. Because I don't want to be in prison for something I didn't do. My kids are left alone. Like, I get it. I know I would feel the exact same way. I would never,
Like I told you, I've got kids too.
yeah, I would never really, I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I don't,
I have, you know, I want to help you out, and that's why, like I said, I just want to be here to.
is Jason here too?
Is it children's? But we're gonna have him come here too. So, I know we've gone over the story and over and over. That's just something that we.
Yeah, you gotta keep jumping, yeah.
Just want to make sure that there's nothing else that stands out that you can think of. Any comments that have ever been made, you know, that you thought, whoa, you know, or his daughters, have they ever said anything?
I don't, yeah. I don't know that much, the middle one, I don't.
She doesn't talk to you much?
No, she stays over there, but like I know she's in school for hair, so
Yeah.
like if I have a family party or something, we do a lot of hunting banquets, fundraisers.
Now, he gets up every weekend. Does he ever get them through the week?
Depending on if they're out of school or not. Like
Okay.
President's Day, I didn't have Hannah because Caitlin was off school, so she kept her.
Okay.
So, and last week I didn't have her. I only had her Monday, Tuesday, because Thursday was a rain day.
Okay.
And I don't babysit on Fridays.
Right. And then the weekends he's off?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How's her relationship with her sisters?
Okay, good.
Are they nice to her?
I think so. I think she's the one that aggravates. Oh, I heard, you know what I mean? Yeah.
You said she's rambunctious. Does she jump like all the time on
Yeah.
furniture?
Yeah.
Does she? Yeah. How does she do when you discipline her? Like if you put her in timeout, does she sit or is she gonna jump around?
She sits.
Yeah.
I don't really have to discipline them, but except for like, hey, don't take the toy, don't fight, sit down, you know. I mean,
Does she play well with the other girls? She's not like stingy or anything like that? You said that she did it when she first came, but now she doesn't do that anymore?
that's good. Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of things that could just, anything, do you know what I mean? That could help.
Don't really know.
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's why I just, you know, for me, I know if I was in this situation, like you said, anything they want, let's do this because I'm willing to help you out any way I can, you know what I mean? And I was like, I just want to get this out of the way. But is there anything else about Jason that you think that stands out?
Just that everything that he's single dad and busy and probably frustrated. I think he owes TJ's dad some money for the car and the house and all that. You know?
Yeah.
And he's behind paying me. I don't know.
Does he have to pay for his car?
The car that he drives was my father-in-law's. Okay. He bought it from him, so I think it's just me.
Oh, okay.
Jay is my father-in-law.
Oh.
But like, yeah, I don't know if it's a girlfriend or it's a girl.
Just the and then hangs out with you. Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't know anything about her, do you? Because I'm wondering if he ever was over there.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Okay. I'll be right back. Okay. Sure you don't want anything to drink? You want anything here?
No, I can't eat. God, no.
All right. I'll be back. Do you want me to take this hamburger away?
Yeah.
All right. What do you think?
Oh, I just want to go home.
Give me a minute. just wanted to let you know, we're talking to TJ.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, yeah, he's, 2 doors out. So as soon as we're done talking to him, we'll let you guys get out of here, okay? All right, Jared. You're welcome. question real quick. Can we get, do you care to sign a consent so we can dump your phone and get the timeline for the text messages when you call 911? Of course. So we can have that. Okay. Let me go get the phone real quick and then you sign it on there. Okay. Right there. What is the description of your phone? What kind is it?
I think it's an iPhone 7 Plus.
Who's the carrier?
Verizon.
It's 2 days a week.
Yeah. He's a good guy, 95. He's a really good guy.
He said he was nervous at first, called the attorney to see those rights were and this and that, and he's like, just can't talk to you guys.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do your phone in.
Okay.
And just signature and just whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing to hide. I don't even have a lawyer, and even though I said I just don't know what to do.
Right.
Oh, I don't want to get in trouble for something I didn't do.
Right.
And I don't know what I'm supposed to do in this sense. I mean, I didn't brush my teeth this morning. I just now realized that. Oh my God.
You have to do what feels right to you.
Call him. I don't even know what to say to him.
No, not right now. You let me answer anyway.
Sorry for breathing on you. I just realized
I don't smell your mind.
I just now realized that it's not question.
It's okay. I can't smell it. Okay, got this done. I'll be right back, okay? Can I call her?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
May I proceed?
Please do.
Detective, after this interview, what did you do next?
I allowed her to leave with TJ.
Your Honor, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Howard, you be doing cross?
Yes, sir.
So when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Detective Lambert.
Hello, ma'am.
I've never met with you, have I?
No, not personally.
How many times have you met with either Prosecutor Hiley or Prosecutor Sheehan?
Sheehan just a couple of times. Hiley, I would say maybe 5 or 6.
And how many times have you...
Please.
Me? Oh, sorry. Do I need to increase my volume?
You're a witness. I'm having trouble hearing the witness.
Okay, sorry. How many times have you met with Prosecutor Sheehan or Hiley?
Hiley a couple of times, or I'm sorry, Sheehan a couple of times, and Hiley maybe 5 or 6.
Okay. And in terms of this, the last thing that you did in that interview was obtain a consent from Lindsay Partin. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as Defendant's Exhibit G as in George. Did you recognize that document, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is that?
This is our consent to search form that we have at the Butler County Sheriff's Office.
And it's fair to say that we watched you come back into the room at the end of that video, and Lindsay Partin signed that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so is it fair to say that at least by an hour afterwards, well, let me break that up. Did you keep her phone at that time, or did she leave with her phone?
We kept the phone at the time.
Okay. So when was it that you all, any one of the detectives at the Butler County Sheriff's Department, opened up her phone and got the timeline of the texts and the calls?
The calls were opened when we were there in the room with her. It was
Okay.
on video.
So when Sergeant Whitlock was incorrect in the time that he said she called 911, that's when you all for the first time knew that she'd called 911 at 7:02:51?
Per her phone, yes. As far as the call log?
Yes.
For her phone? That was
Yes.
the first time I viewed it.
Okay. And so you also viewed that at 7:01:24, she'd had an incoming call from Jason Weshy's phone number to Lindsay Partin's phone number?
I don't know, ma'am.
You didn't view that?
No.
So this consent to view her call log, you didn't look at that?
No, ma'am.
Which detective or sergeant or even deputy did look at that?
I know that Detective
Listen.
Ventry,
Do you know who did?
I don't know who did.
Okay, so let me back that up. What time of the day is this when Lindsay's free to go that day? Do you know?
I don't know for certain. I believe
Was
it was
it-
around 2, but I don't know for certain.
So it was certainly afternoon?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you've received the consent to search for the timeline, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You gotta answer out loud.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have in your possession the phone, correct?
I did not personally have the phone in my possession.
Which detective does?
There was another one that did. I don't know who.
Okay, so you have no knowledge of this?
Not of the phone. No,
Okay.
ma'am.
So you're telling this court, of this jury, that you don't know that the telephone call from Jason to Lindsay at 7:01:24 was the next call in her log?
I don't.
And you don't know the call before that was the outgoing call from Lindsay to Jason at 7:47?
I know what
Objection,
Lindsay.
Your Honor. She's already indicated she doesn't know.
Overruled.
You may answer.
I know that Lindsay and Sergeant Whitlock had a conversation, and he asked her what time, and she said 7:01. She placed the call to him, and then 7:02 she placed the call to 911.
Okay, so you got that consent to search that timeline, and you handed it off to somebody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Or somebody took it from you?
I did not have it in my possession.
Who did you hand it off to?
There is Detective Ventry. He does all the phone dumps for us. He's the one that handles all of that.
This isn't a phone dump. This is simply
Right.
opening the phone,
Correct.
which you have consent to do.
Correct.
And look
Sergeant
at the call
Whitlock
log.
also had the phone, so he would be the one that would also have it.
Who did?
Sergeant Whitlock.
Okay. So, just so that the ladies and gentlemen of the jury know, you're a detective, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the rank above that is what?
A sergeant.
So Sergeant Whitlock is above you.
Yes, ma'am.
In terms of sergeants involved in this case at that time, were there any other sergeants involved?
Sergeant Tanner.
Tanner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in terms of, that's the remainder of the sergeants?
Yes, ma'am.
What about, I don't know, what's above a sergeant, a lieutenant?
Lieutenant.
What lieutenant is involved?
Lieutenant Bucay.
Did you see him there that day?
I don't recall seeing him. I was in the room off and on.
So you don't know about the call log time. What about the text log time?
I didn't see the text either.
So they just sent you in there to get the consent, and then they held onto the phone and didn't bother to open it and look at that
Yes,
log.
ma'am.
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know when Detective Ventura got around to doing his phone dump?
No, ma'am, I don't.
If I told you it wasn't until days later, would you agree with that?
I don't know. I can't agree to something I don't know.
After this, let's say 2 o'clock on the 8th of March, when's the next time you touch this case in terms of talking to witnesses or making calls or going out and hitting the streets?
The next morning,
Okay. You didn't do anything after 2 o'clock that afternoon?
we communicated amongst ourselves for the rest of the day.
Okay. You didn't make any more calls?
No, ma'am. I spoke with, I take that back. I spoke with a friend of Lindsay's that she babysat her child for. Spoke with her.
Christina Lewis?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time did you make that call?
I don't recall what time I made that call.
Was it after Lindsay left the police station or
Yes,
the
ma'am.
sheriff's department?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you make any other calls related to this case that evening or that afternoon?
I called and spoke with her. That was it.
And her being Christina Lewis?
Christina Lewis,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. How many times have you watched this video?
3 times.
And do you know the particular dates of those watchings?
I don't.
Okay. You certainly watched it. Where's the disc? Is the disc in here?
Up there, on top of the rest of the exhibits.
I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit 93. I believe you indicated on direct examination that you placed your initials on that CD. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Or DVD. I'm not sure the technical term of that. And you did that on April 2nd of 2019. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so back in time, from between March 8th of 2018 and April 2nd of 2019, when have you watched that video?
I watched this on April 2nd. I don't have the dates or time wrote down for when I watched it before.
Okay. And can you guesstimate on that?
I don't even want to give a guesstimate.
The next day on Friday, that'd be Friday the 9th of March, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it fair to say that you went back to the 4050 Shank Road residence?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, you all asked Lindsay to come back to the station again?
Yes, ma'am.
And you approximate what time that was?
I don't recall what time that was in the morning. I know it was the morning time.
Okay. And would you agree with me that during the time frame that you were in the house, you check over the children, Vivian and Savannah, to make sure that they don't have any bruising on them?
I did so when Lindsay had asked me to help clothe her children.
And I'm not saying you did anything nefarious, but you did that, correct?
I did.
Okay. How long have you been a detective, ma'am?
Since January 6, 2018.
Okay. So when this case came about, you had been a detective for two months?
Yes, ma'am.
2 months and a couple days?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically, what were your duties associated with this particular case on March 8th?
I was interviewing Lindsay Partin.
Were you assigned at any point in time to try to retrieve any video footage from a Walmart?
We did.
Did you do that retrieval?
We were not able to obtain any.
There wasn't any video, is that correct?
Correct.
Other than yourself, what other detective or deputy or sergeant or lieutenant was assigned to try to retrieve that video?
It was myself, and I don't recall if it was Detective Sprague or if it was, I want to say it was Detective Sprague went with me.
Okay. How many years had you been a deputy prior to becoming a detective, ma'am?
I went out on road patrol in 2008.
And were you a continuous full-time employee road patrol officer from 2008 until 2018 when you became a detective?
No, ma'am. I was laid off from 2010 to 2012.
Okay. So in terms of have you always been employed by the Butler County Sheriff's Department except for those 2 years of layoff?
Yes, ma'am.
So from 2008 to 2010, you were a road patrol deputy?
Yes, ma'am.
And what area were you assigned?
I was downtown and then I went out to Liberty Township.
Okay. And I'm assuming you mean downtown, the city of Hamilton?
It just depended, actually. They would have me go out to Wayne Township. I'd work out in Morgan Township. I'd work in Madison.
Okay.
Just depend on the day, pretty much.
Okay. Did you ever work in the Hanover Township area?
Every now and then.
Okay. And then after your layoff, you came back in 2012 and remained a deputy until your promotion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to come up with the word of what that would be.
That's okay.
Okay. Would you agree with me that as a sheriff's office deputy and then a detective, that part of your job and training and experience is to write reports and narratives?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's important that you document your observations within those narratives?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, it's standard police procedure to do so?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it proper to say police and sheriff? I want to make sure I'm clear on that.
The police is different from sheriff.
Okay. Is it proper sheriff's procedure to write reports?
It is.
And write narratives?
Yes, ma'am.
And in this particular case, were your narratives provided to Detective Turner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Detective Turner is seated at the prosecutor's table, is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And he was the lead detective in this case, is that fair to say?
It is.
Okay. And so you would submit your narratives to him, correct?
Yes.
And how many times have you discussed this case with Detective Turner?
Maybe 3 times.
3 times in a year?
Yes, ma'am.
When were those 3 times?
I don't recall.
Is it that you don't recall because you didn't write it down at the time that it was occurring, or you don't have a good memory?
It's because I didn't write it down.
So you would agree with me that if you don't write something down at the time that it happens, your memory might not be correct.
You're right.
Are you aware that Detective Turner prepared and submitted a report of investigation in this matter and presented that to the prosecutor's office? Mm-hmm. Is that a yes?
Yes.
And have you had an opportunity to review that?
To review what part?
The report of investigation that Detective Turner prepared.
I have not read his portion.
Okay. Prior to coming in here to testify today, did you review any documents whatsoever?
I reviewed mine.
You reviewed
my part
yours.
in it, I reviewed what I did.
Okay. And in terms of what you did, so you're not aware of what is contained within the entirety of the report of investigation?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so would that be fair to say that you're not aware of what's contained within the entirety of the updated report of investigation?
If it doesn't pertain to me, no, ma'am. We all have different duties that we do.
So you would be unaware that Detective Turner only included some of your narratives within the report of investigation?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, what narrative did you prepare in this case?
I don't understand what you're asking.
You said you only prepared your own narratives and you only reviewed your own narratives for purposes of testifying today. Which ones were those?
The ones that I provided for our follow-up.
And what were those?
The ones that spoke about when we went to the hospital, we spoke to Jason, and then when we spoke to Lindsay and responded to her residence and asked her to come to the sheriff's office to give her side of the story.
And your narrative in regards to Christina Lewis, is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
So 3 narratives?
Yes, ma'am.
And you'd agree with me that the narrative related to the hospital would be referencing Fort Hamilton Hughes Hospital, is that fair to say?
Correct.
And you'd agree with me that the narrative related to the residence is when you went to the residence in regards to the photographs, is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
And the narrative about Christina Lewis we've narrowed down to be on 3/8/18, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, ma'am, there's a 4th narrative that you've prepared in this case, isn't that correct?
What's that?
Another narrative in regards to the house, going to the residence, correct?
I went to her residence twice, yes.
Okay. On 3/18? I'm sorry, 3/8/18?
I went to her house on 3/8, and then I went to her house again on 3/9.
You didn't prepare a narrative as it relates to 3/9/18, did you?
I did not. Detective Hensley did.
Okay. So the 3 narratives I asked you about were the narrative for the Fort Hamilton Hospital, which obviously occurred on 3/8/18, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The narrative as it relates to going to the residence on 3/8/18, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And the telephone call with Christina Lewis on 3/8/18, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There's a 4th narrative, is there not?
There is, but I did not write it.
You didn't write the 4th narrative?
The 4th narrative was Detective Hensley. He wrote about us going out to the residence the 2nd day. That's what you were speaking of.
No, I'm speaking about a 2nd residence narrative for 3/8/18 that you prepared.
I don't recall that.
I'm going to show you what I'm going to mark as, I think I'm on H as in Harry. And I'll direct your attention to it. I'm handing the witness exhibit marked as defendant's exhibit H as in Harry. I'm going to direct your attention specifically to, beginning at the bottom of page 2, and they're not numbered, but you'd agree with me that this would be page 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is page 2. And then 2, 3, and beginning into 4. Mm-hmm. Do you see your name located on a purported narrative of 3/8/18, 8 a.m. Fort Hamilton Hospital?
Yes, ma'am.
First it says Detective Sprague. I always say his name wrong. What is it?
It's okay, it's Sprague.
Sprague. Mm-hmm. and then Detective Lambert. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you indicated it's the interview of Jason Weshy, Lindsay Partin. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you'd agree with me that that 7-paragraph narrative you wrote, correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you know you wrote it because it begins with Detectives Sprague and I spoke with, correct?
Correct.
So the entirety of those paragraphs of that narrative are you, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that leads us to page 34. Then you see another entry immediately preceding the Fort Hamilton Hospital narrative. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
3/8/18. It's your narrative in relationship to talking to Christina Lewis. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And those paragraphs, both the ones we just looked at for the Fort Hamilton Hospital as well as this paragraph, appear to be true and accurate. Is that correct?
I would need to read over it.
Please
but
do
yes.
so.
Yes, ma'am.
Do those paragraphs all appear to be true and accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And what you prepared in relationship to this case for those narratives?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And in terms of that, you recognize that in the, make sure I get to the right page. Page 4, the top paragraph of that page, you have inserted and typed that Detective S. Sprague and I responded to Lindsay's residence located at 4050 Shank Road in Hamilton to take photographs of the incident location, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Photographs were taken of the toy train in each room inside the residence, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Lindsay was asked to respond to the Butler County Sheriff's Office to give a voluntary recorded statement of facts she provided to us at the Fort Hamilton Hospital, correct?
Yes.
So within your Fort Hamilton Hospital narrative is a narrative related to what happened at 4050 Shank Road, correct?
Yes.
You're aware that sometime in March of 2019, you provided another supplemental for that same occasion while Detective S. Sprague and I were at Lindsay Partin's residence
Could I see
for
that, please?
3/8/18. Are you aware that you provided another narrative?
I'm not aware that I provided yet another one.
I'll hand you what I'll mark as Defendant's Exhibit I as in Ingrid. Do you recognize that?
I do recognize it.
You wrote that sometime after 3/8/18, isn't that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what date you wrote that on?
I do not. I don't have any documentation here.
You see, did I leave H up there with you?
Yes.
Sorry.
Do you need I as well?
Yeah, I apologize. Your Honor, I always forget to ask to approach the witness. I kind of seem to do it just by rote. I'm sorry.
Okay. I want you to look back at H as in Harry,
Okay.
if you would, please. And specifically looking at your narrative that you've already agreed that you typed that all up, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you would agree with me that within the narratives, page 2, 3, 4, that are all your typing, that the name Lindsay Partin, or Lindsay, is multiple times there, correct?
Correct.
And could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury of how you spell Lindsay's name, her first name, in those 8 paragraphs?
Lindsay was spelled Lindsey.
And you still have in front of you Exhibit I as in Ingrid, is that correct?
Yes.
And could you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how on whatever day you prepared this report, you spelled Lindsay?
Lindsay.
You'd agree with me that you certainly didn't prepare those on the same day, correct, as you had in H, correct?
I can't say if I prepared this on the same day or not.
You spelled her name differently.
I also see that it's spelled differently here in the top.
I'm looking at your writing.
I understand that.
Your typing. You agreed with me that you wrote the particular paragraphs contained on page 2, 3, and 4, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That was your typing, your words, and your words alone, correct?
Yes.
And some later time, when you create this brand new narrative that you provide and we get in March of 2019, you are spelling her name differently, correct?
Yes.
And when I say her, I mean Lindsay Partin, correct?
Correct.
You created that at some later time, is that correct?
I typed it obviously later than I typed this one.
You're aware that the narrative that you provided in whenever you typed it up, is much different than your prior narratives. Are you aware of that?
It's more detailed.
And I think you already testified that you understand the concept that you remember events that transpire closer in time when you're writing it out, correct?
I can remember events, but I don't remember the time if I don't write it down.
So you'd agree with me that you probably, at the very minimum, wrote this March of 2019 narrative up after you'd watched the video, correct?
I can't say that.
And you'd probably written this narrative up at least probably after the next day when Lindsay Partin goes and talks a second time, correct?
I can't say that either.
When you began your testimony today, you indicated that your memory was that, let me get my note correct. When you responded to the Fort Hamilton Hospital and you were speaking with Lindsay, you testified that she told you that Hannah was dropped off at about 6:55. Do you recall that testimony?
Mm-hmm.
That's incorrect, correct?
Where did I say that at?
In your testimony.
Jason said that she was dropped off at 6:55.
Okay, so if your testimony was that Lindsay told you Hannah was dropped off at 6:55, you were incorrect this morning or this afternoon when we began your testimony.
Lindsay stated that he texted her at 6:52, and Jason stated that she was dropped off at 6:55.
And in terms of that, Are you telling me that at the hospital you did know what time the text was at?
I know from what someone told me, but I did not view the text. That's the question you had asked, is if I viewed the text, and I had not.
And you still haven't viewed the text?
No, ma'am.
I don't mean to be mean here, but in terms of the number of detectives assigned to this case, how many are there?
I don't know how many detectives are assigned to this case.
Yourself?
I can count myself, and I can
Detective
count
Turner?
Detective Turner. I can name a couple of them, but I don't know who all is involved and who is not.
Detective Sprague?
Sprague.
Was he the
Detective
detective
Ventry.
that you were assigned to maybe drive around with or partner with?
For that day, yes.
Okay. And then there's Detective Hensley, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Detective Venturer, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Detective Morris, correct?
He was not on the case, as far as I
You're not aware
know.
that he signed an affidavit for a search warrant and presented that to a judge in this case?
I'm not aware of him doing that.
Have you ever done an affidavit for a search warrant, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're aware that when you write an affidavit for a search warrant, it's imperative that it's accurate, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in fact, when you're going to see a judge seeking a search warrant of anything, whether it be a house or a phone, you're telling the judge, I swear, Your Honor, the things I put in this affidavit are true, correct?
Yes.
Swear under oath.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you're aware of how important it is to put accuracy within affidavits for search warrants, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you wouldn't expect your fellow detectives to lie in their affidavits for search warrants, would you?
That's not a good practice, no.
Okay. So are you aware that Detective Hensley, Detective Morris, and Detective Ventura all put in a particular
Objection, Your Honor.
sentence?
May we approach?
Detective Lambert, you're aware that at about 38 minutes into the tape that we've just watched, that you and your partner, Detective Sprague, tell Lindsay, we've talked to the doctors down at UC, and whatever happened to her happened this morning. You recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
That's a lie, correct?
I can't say that's a lie.
Well, the detectives wouldn't lie in affidavits, correct?
I am. I try my best not to lie.
Are you aware that any detectives have been lying from the Butler County Sheriff's Department?
Lying in an affidavit? I don't know of the affidavit.
You're not familiar with it?
Not the one that they went and had signed, no.
But you're aware they did it, correct?
I am now, you told me.
You didn't know this beforehand?
No, ma'am.
Would that be something that only a lead detective would know about?
The lead detective gets all the information collected from everyone.
So if another detective had been down at UC that morning and told the complete opposite of that, that would mean you were lying to Lindsay Partin when you said this, correct?
When I said what?
We've talked to the doctors down at
Objection,
UC.
Your Honor.
Approach.